WCPT's To the Left with Sameena and Shana. Here's our host with Sameena Mustafa and Shana East.
Welcome back. Are we on? Welcome back to the left. Lady B, are we live?
Lady B. Oh my God. We're not live. We're not live.
Yes, sir. Go.
Hello?
We're back.
I'm not hearing us on the headphones.
Well, we're going to have to trust
Sorry,
the power of the board.
Difficulty.
We're going to have to trust the power of the board. Now we can hear it.
Oh, hello, world. We're back.
You know what? We've been doing this how many shows?
I think this is the 9th or 10th.
Okay, so we are clearly new to radio technology.
No, people who are listening at home and who have talked to me said that they can't believe we've only had that many shows and that we're old hat. This is old hat for us, that we're real pros.
I don't know if old and hat are good terms. I don't know if I'm going to
New shoe.
I don't know. Something. That we're pros. How about that we're pros? I would rather.
Yes.
So our mics are working. We can both hear each other. Okay.
This is To the Left. I'm Shana East, and this is my co-host and co-producer,
Sameena Mustafa. Welcome back to our listeners. It is December 23rd, and we have an exciting show. Today we've got Donte Townsend of Chicago NORML. We're going to be talking about cannabis legalization. That's really exciting. But we have, and I will not be here next week. So Shana had to find somebody else with an S name because that's the rule. We have more sound effects, you guys. Sheila Garland O'Lanaran is going to be here in my stead.
from NNU,
yes.
National Nurses United, and the Illinois Poor People's Campaign, and also other groups as well. She's great.
Yeah, she is great.
She said she had dinner with you and that she thought you were super cool.
You know what? I don't know.
I didn't have the heart to tell her the truth.
year-end cattiness. Here you go, people. Okay. Okay, world. Shana has been enabled with all of the sound effects.
Sorry.
I am just sitting here. I'm just sitting here with my voice. But in any event, it's been an eventful week. So we got a few things to talk about before we bring Donte out. So can I bring up something that we talked about, the email that went out this week?
Go ahead.
So earlier this week, a couple of folks that we know got an email from Tony Preckwinkle's campaign talking about the case that we talked about on the show, I think it was just last week, about Centoya Brown, the woman in Tennessee who is, we're hoping she will be granted clemency. Now, the sad news is that she was not in the list of clemency. Let's see, what's the word I'm trying to find? She was not granted. Yeah, recipients. She was not granted clemency yet, and there was a group of 11 folks, and her name was not on it, sadly. Right. But an email went out appealing to folks to her case, and yet the email had nothing to do with actually helping her or organizations that are helping her. It was really just a fundraising email. So two things. One, we unfortunately, political campaigns do this all the time. Mm-hmm. This is like an old, tactic. It's old hat. It's old hat, Shana.
New shoe.
I know. With political campaigns, they do this all the time. So there's a little bit of a cynical, this is what we do. But it's, I want to go back to something we talked about even before we got on the show. This is a good example of what intersectionality does not look like. Mm-hmm. So a note to self. So that was kind of a bad move.
It would have been better if the end of the email said, and this is how you can help.
Yeah, write a letter, call,
any calls to action, or a link to her legal defense, or anything. And then you could ask maybe for a donation, at the bottom, but it didn't do anything. It didn't have any of that in there. So,
and something that you see from a lot of political groups is what they'll do is they might say, we are concerned about this issue, and then they split the donation, right? They get the donation to their campaign, like Kamala Harris did this for Stacey Abrams. She said, help Stacey Abrams in her fight to make sure every vote counts. And people were upset. We're like, oh, well, she's getting half the money. I'm like, well, that they obviously came to some agreement or something. I didn't follow up. I didn't talk to anyone with the Abrams camp or the Harris camp to know. But like things like that happen all the time. But in that case, there was money going to Stacey Abrams. It wasn't like this has nothing to do with her and nothing's going to come to Stacey Abrams' aid. So, yeah, that, to me, that was one of those things where it's like you're under a microscope. You're running for mayor, and just this is a case that's getting a lot of attention, as it should, but using it just kind of struck, I think, a lot of folks, and including myself, as a little cynical. So
yeah, I unsubscribed from, I don't know how I was put on Tony Prickwinkle's mailing list, but I was. Someone gave email addresses from something that I was on, and so I had already unsubscribed, like a month or so ago. So I didn't get the email, but I saw an article. I think it was in the Reader.
Yeah, it was in the Reader.
Yeah, so that's how I found out about it.
So Maya, who's a writer there, wrote in there, and actually somebody I know who is a really strong advocate on the issue of sexual violence, Claudia Garcia Rojas, was quoted in the article just talking about how she just, again, sort of the same reaction, like, this is not cool. But you know what? In terms of people having a disconnect when it comes to intersectionality, we've had a few instances of that this week, I think. And you came across one.
So I just want to say up front that if you're a part of an organization and you bring up an issue that you're facing within the organization, that should be well received. You should be able to say, I'm struggling with this issue, like I need help. I want to feel comfortable in my organization. I'm a member. I'm doing work, here's what's going on, and hear that feedback, and then let's work together on solutions. Unfortunately, that is not typically the case. What happens is the organization does not seem to take these accusations seriously. There isn't always a spelled out grievance process or whatever. Or sometimes there is a grievance process and, it isn't sufficient. So one of the organizations that I am a member of, and I don't want to hear anyone say that I'm, not really a democratic socialist or I'm trying to hurt the organization or I don't want to hear it, okay? I am someone who thinks that inclusivity is key to the success of this organization, and I am a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. I became a member after Bernie, it was clear that Bernie wasn't gonna be the candidate that went on to the general election in 2016. I was a delegate at I don't want to hear someone say I'm not active. I was a delegate at the last convention for DSA. I don't need to prove myself and my worth to the organization and be treated like I'm an outsider. So just getting that out of the way, DSA has inclusivity issues, to say the least. And if those
things heard it here, folks.
If those things are brought up, you're treated like you're invalidated. Right. You're treated like you're there to disrupt the organization in some way, and then you're marginalized. And I'm sure that varies from chapter to chapter because the chapters are all autonomous from one another. But in my chapter, I have dealt with, I feel like sexism. Personally, I've dealt with sexism in the organization, and I brought that up this week to a working group I'm in, and, a couple comrades had my back, and then people didn't have my back, and it was very stressful. So anyways, this article came out in the New Republic that was called, "Do America's Socialists Have a Race Problem?" And, it's just a question. It's not saying yes, but it was a thought-provoking piece, and I think that, it brought validation to a lot of people of color and black folks in DSA that feel like they've brought these issues up and aren't being heard. So a lot of people of color and folks from DSA shared this, saying, thank you, hello, this is what I'm going through. And I thought it was a good opportunity for us to do some self-reflection and say, you know, maybe we do need to change course. Maybe we do need to start thinking about this. The tendency in DSA is to shift racial issues to being of class.
Right.
You know,
it's like a denial that racism is the driving force but behind some of those issues.
In my experience, being in some of these discussions where people are bringing up, you know, feeling like they're being discriminated against, then people sort of clap back and say, you know, this is really a class thing. Let's not get into identity politics. And then they push it aside. And then as a result, a lot of people just end up not participating.
Right.
Or they don't attend meetings anymore, and maybe they just pay membership but aren't in the working groups, aren't doing work, and it's a problem. And I really think so. Then, I thought this was a good piece to open the door to some discussion and self-reflection to improve DSA, to make it a better organization, a more inclusive organization with more participation, and then a clapback from, 10 to 12 DSA leadership members who all stated that they're people of color and that they disagree with this article. So what the New Republic got wrong. And it's like, it's fine, DSA, folks from DSA prepare these statements all the time and get people to sign on to it. It's just a DSA cultural thing that happens all the time. But I thought it was a tone-deaf reaction to this. Because it's like, just because you're people of color and you think that this is wrong, doesn't mean that the people who think it's right are not, their feelings and experiences are not valid.
Right.
There's room for both. You can, as a person of color, think, this is incorrect, not factual, didn't get all the points of view in, blah, 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 whatever their, argument is here. But you can say that they're also, their feelings and experiences are also valid.
Yeah, I have a couple of responses to that. One, people, nobody likes being called a racist. And that's, just our American culture is people react, and that's like the worst thing. It's the worst thing to do is to be called a racist versus actually being racist, it seems like. The other thing is what I think is also problematic is, and I've been to a couple of events, and I don't want to actually focus solely on DSA because I've been to a lot of organizations that purport to be
just DSA.
It's not just DSA. They purport to be leftist or progressive or liberal or whatever adjective you want to use, and you show up and I am usually the only person of color, or if there is a person of color that is there, they do what we who are sensitive to these issues and educating ourselves in this, they perform whiteness. They are playing to this, what they think they need to say and do to fit the culture of that organization. And so that's where there's a phrase, and I'm not going to use it quite, but the magical person of color that they elevate and say like, oh, look, this person of color thinks we're not racist and they're fine with what we do and they're part of our leadership, or they're somebody that we've elevated. But the reality is, if you look around that, if you go to a meeting or an event, I can't tell you how many times I've gone and I'm like, where are the people of color? They're not here. And that tells me something. It's like they either got pushed out or they showed up and they didn't feel like there was a reason for them to stay. So that's something that I think there's too many organizations on the left that don't do a good job of truly being intersectional in their thinking and how they operate and who they elevate to leadership. And it's all about centering whiteness instead of, really operating in an intersectional way. So
definitely.
So that, I feel like that clapback is so predictable. Like it's not, but it's not helpful. because I can't even tell you how many times I have had women of color specifically say, I don't feel comfortable going to a DSA event, or I don't feel comfortable. And
that's why I thought this article was good. I thought it's not stating that DSA is a white supremacist organization in any way. It's raising a question, and it's talking about this one example with Kat Brooks in Oakland, and like what happened at her endorsement. When they were discussing her endorsement in that chapter, as to raise this question for all the chapters. Yeah. And there should be room to raise these questions. I don't even see why you needed to clap back to that. It's like... Yeah, I think, again, it goes back to like nobody wants to be called a racist, and nobody wants to have those honest conversations about what do we need to do about race. And again, I don't care what group you are, Democracy for America, Indivisible, whatever it is. I go to all of these groups, and I'm usually the only person of color. So, we have an upcoming episode that's going to further explore this topic. We need to plug that quickly, and then
on January 6th, we're going to have Anoa Changa on talking, and Bryn Hovde, who is of the Nova Collective. We're going to be talking about white supremacy on the left. So we're going to be talking about that, not only sort of the issues, but how some folks are tackling it and creating solutions, and how do we have those conversations, and how do we build movements. And because at the end of the day, we can point out the issue, but we have to figure out a way to tackle the problem.
Definitely. So this is just a preview of what's to come on January 6th.
Yeah.
You're listening to The Left with Sameena and Shana. You can watch us on Facebook Live at facebook.com/To The Left Radio. And like that Facebook page, please, come on, put us up to 1,000. We're only at 600 and something.
Yeah, we can. You all can do it.
We could go up to 1,000. Let's do it. Share your comments and questions with us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc. using the hashtag To The Left. That's TO The Left. And our handle on all social media is ampersand. No. At symbol. What is it?
At symbol. At symbol.
Ampersand's okay, sorry. At symbol To The Left Radio. And we're going to take a quick break, and we will be back with Donte Townsend of Chicago NORML in just a couple minutes.
Yep, sounds good. I'm Sameena Mustafa.
I'm Shana East.
We're producing a show on WCPT Sundays at 1 o'clock.
What should we call it?
How about Smash the Patriarchy?
I like it, but that's a lot of pressure. What about left-leaning ladies?
What about woman-splaining?
Yeah, but what about when we have guys on? What about Madigan's Worst Nightmare?
It gets enough attention.
I got it. To the left.
I like that. That could work.
Tune in To The Left with Sameena and Shana on WCPT 820, Sundays at 1.
We are back. This is To The Left with Sameena and Shana. I'm Sameena Mustafa.
And I'm Shana East.
We are back talking about the legalization of cannabis, and we have a special guest.
Donte Townsend.
There you go. Welcome, Donte.
Jumping the gun there.
Yeah, no worries. We're casual easygoing kind of show. We're all old friends here, but so we're really excited you're here, Donte. And we were talking a little bit before we got on air, and wanted to know a little bit about what NORML is, what Chicago NORML is, and how you got to doing this work, being part of the organization.
Okay. NORML is the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. They are in every state. They have a active, heavy hand in the legalization and the reform of the laws, including legalization of cannabis. Illinois is currently going under the medical pilot program right now, which means that we're only able to have medical cannabis here in Illinois. Illinois NORML oversees a lot of the things that has happened up to this point, and made a lot of great strides. As I was listening to you guys earlier, you were speaking on, getting into certain industries and going to certain rooms and being the only minority in the room. Even before Chicago NORML was even thought of, that's what I was doing. I was trying to get into these rooms once I found out that it went legal medically. I knew that it was going to be job creation. It was going to be cannabis involved. It was going to be legal. So I was like, okay, well, where do I fit in at, and being the only minority in the room, I felt that I didn't fit anywhere, other than trying to scramble for a seat at the table for information. And
you had experience working at a medical dispensary, correct?
Oh yes. Okay. This was after everything. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't just land in there.
Yeah, you weren't just like you actually have been working in the industry and wanted to. Yeah. Be a part of the conversation.
Exactly. Yeah. Working at the dispensary was a great opportunity. That was for Windy City Cannabis. I actually ended up making a lot of great connections with people through going to these meetings and speaking my mind about the lack of diversity and just the cannabis industry as a whole is where it's going. It's kind of low key in Illinois. You really don't know about it unless you've heard about it, and even that person might not even know half of what they should know about it. But, that's kind of one of the things that I felt was a big void that needed to be filled, especially in my community. Especially in my community, dealing with, the crime, minorities being the #1 locked up for cannabis, but with cannabis being legal, being the #1 left behind as far as for the lack of information and access.
Right. So the monetization was primarily white, and the criminalization is primarily people of color, is what you were saying.
Yeah, correct, yeah.
So that's really striking. And so you were talking a little bit about how you came to doing, to be in the industry itself. And it just sort of seeing like, okay, this is, we're so close in Illinois, we can make this happen.
Yeah, most definitely. We can definitely make it happen. There are other states that are making strides to get minorities more actively involved in the cannabis industry. And as legalization was, being spoken on, that was something that was never brought up. And you see it here and there. Oakland's doing this, or Massachusetts doing this. Even New York just had a big win for a social equity program that they're starting up.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like what they're doing in those places that's more equitable?
It's pretty much they're putting it into effect for when they're creating these laws for communities that are of color, that cannabis businesses that operate in those communities have to include people from that neighborhood, which would be, of course, minorities or people who have faced prison time or for possession or anything like that, that they would be on paper, it would seem to be the first come, first serve to qualify for those licenses that would be granted.
So which areas have done that sort of licensing to affected folks first?
Oakland has been put on the map for that, for doing that. They have equity programs which would allow people who, like I say, who've served time for cannabis possession or whatnot, like I said, to be the first to be granted those licenses. Massachusetts has started a program. I'm not really too familiar on that, but they have a commission control which would pretty much oversee just community reinvestments, job opportunity, job placement as far as minorities entering the cannabis space.
And talk a little bit about you. You are the creator or founder of Chicago NORML.
Chicago NORML, yes, I'm the founder, co-creator. Chicago NORML was pretty much resulted from me going to these different meetings, these different mixers, and then not being anything that was even thought about, just networking with business owners, currently people that were employed. That, you know, it was just, okay, well, you know, pretty much what's going on, where are these jobs at, who's working these jobs, how do you get these jobs? And like you said, I was a question that I also faced a lot that kind of sat with me kind of wrong. You know, why was I the only black person in the room dealing with legal cannabis business talk? And a lot of the business owners was asking me that, like, you know, you would think that there would be a lot more people, but it's not. But, you know, they speak on job creation and diversity, but they don't bring the education and the information to where the minorities are. You know, and I wanted a respectable platform to where it's not just, oh, we black, we want our piece, or we minorities, where's ours at? Because that's something that people talk about, but it's not brought to attention to where to be on a radio show or in the Sun Times. And I wanted a respectable platform, so NORML was the first people that I reached out to. Like I said, they're the most respected name in cannabis. And I did my research, did a little digging, and was like, okay, there are all these NORML chapters. How do you get a chapter? And I did my history on it and went through the paperwork. And as I was going to these different meetings, I was meeting genuine people that looked like me, that had my best interest in the same general ideas in mind as far as creating a new standard and an equity license, in a sense, because we see what's happening here, there, and we know what they're not talking about. So let's bring these issues to the table, and that was pretty much what Chicago NORML is. A lot of people look up cannabis in Chicago and they pop up NORML or hemp staff. As far as Chicago NORML, I wanted to create an opportunity for anybody, not to get rich or anything like that, but more just to have a fair chance to having access to what I have access to. There's nobody in Chicago that gives you a dispensary training class, teaches you to actually be educated on the Illinois laws and be able to teach other people. You know, just working with different colleges with SSDP, to be able to reach out to Cabrini Green Legal Aid and actually work on them with expungement efforts for specifically cannabis offenses. It's like we're the ones that's putting the muscle behind what people are actually talking about. And that's pretty much what Chicago NORML is, and why I wanted to co-create it with the people that I still have operating, my executive director, Edie Moore. We are Kiana Hughes, who's our educational director. She does pretty much everything from trainer, speaking with colleges and different organizations to kind of get on the same path. Everyone has an idea or what they want to do or would like to see, but it's just a conversation. Chicago NORML was pretty much created to put people in a position to make that change. You know what I mean?
So one thing I want to bring up is I've been in, progressive spaces with primarily white folks. And when the subject of cannabis legalization comes up, I've heard people say, who cares about getting high? Like, we got to get health care for all, and there's more important issues than just getting high. And I wanted to talk a little bit about why, to black and brown people, this isn't just about getting high. It's about that, changing the culture where these folks aren't going to be thrown in prison for decades because they had minor drug offenses for having pot on them.
Right.
Did you want to talk a little bit about that for folks who just don't get it?
Most definitely. A lot of people, even my family, a lot of people think, oh, you're dealing with cannabis, you're getting high, or it's all about the actual weed. This is an industry that's developing from the ground up. The laws haven't even been written yet. And from a social reform, too, like you say, people know that minorities are the ones that are always getting locked up for cannabis offense. And like you say, even just the smell of cannabis opens a door to anything, you know, is the number one probable cause.
Broken windows policing, or
you know, you got a right tail light out, and I think I smell cannabis.
Right.
You know what I mean?
and there's a threat of actually being killed in those situations, as we've seen.
Right.
So,
And or even worse, it's been situations that led to people being killed, and it all stems from only having cannabis. You know what I mean? When you
like
look at it
Sandra
like that.
Bland.
Yeah, exactly. So, but you got a lot of people that's raising the issue on, if this goes legal, we got people making millions of dollars in our state, and we all got cousins or relatives that fed their family off of this that's doing time. Who's thinking about them? I was talking to one of my coworkers. A lot of people don't put into effect. The juvenile system is just completely overcrowded. The lawmakers now are kind of focusing on smaller offenses that would be eligible for expungement, but then they don't really put into the fact that the juvenile system, regardless of them being under 18, is still them dealing or being involved with cannabis.
Right.
That would help have them getting thrown out of school, putting on their record. You know, that leading them to being getting out, not being able to do anything as a minor, and dealing with the streets and getting locked back up for cannabis. Now you're in the Cook County jail. Then you go to prison. And, you know, it's just a bad system that needs to be more overlooked and thought about before legalization.
you brought up a point when you were just speaking about the folks who are currently actually making their living off of selling pot on, it's not legal, but this is their livelihood. And what's going to happen to those folks when these big, recreational dispensaries that have wealthy investors and primarily white, very wealthy, ultra wealthy millionaires and billionaires are going to be the ones now profiting off of this. But all the folks who have been, making a living off of this now are going to be out of work. They're not going to have a path to go work. They're not going to say on my resume, 20 years
I sold
selling.
the best weed on the South Side.
I know all the hybrids, the sativas. I got it all down. I know all the strains. I know everything. And can I get a job? They're gonna say no. No, exactly.
Right.
That's so ridiculous.
Is like me and my friends had this conversation all of the time. Is I know people that have been selling cannabis and make more money than a legal dispensary. You know what I'm saying? So and it's Chicago NORML, like I say, gives you a chance to give your passion legitimacy. You know what I mean? We all as minorities love cannabis. People love cannabis, period. I haven't went to school for anything. I'm an advocate, but it all turned from the passion for cannabis. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I went from I want to grow cannabis to actually learning different aspects of this industry to I'm looking at it now from I want to be able to touch it and grow it and cut it and be able to grow weed to now I'm pulling together different people to put a actual business together. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. and have the credibility to bring together some real talent and involve minorities through what I'm doing.
It's me.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know a lot of folks who have sold or grown over the years, illegally, but that they have the same passion for, looking at the size of the buds and how it's growing, and like a farmer would look at their crops,
exactly.
This is their passion, and they should have a pathway to get into this industry.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's you bring up an interesting parallel, which is, what we saw in other sort of industries like farming and agriculture and how it's been essentially destroyed. And there's this, corporatization and consolidation of all these industries, and sort of the entrepreneurial aspect and giving folks that independence and, like you said, sort of validation could potentially be at risk because there's going to be so much money and so many players coming into this space. And so the sort of balancing that and you could write laws about equity, but then what happens when those big consolidators come in?
Exactly. Or even more when you think about writing the laws for just on the social reform for the expungements, you can say it, or we're going to focus on expungements. Expungements cost money. that's time. That takes a lot of manpower. You got to put certain things into play before you even make those suggestions. Those suggestions aren't even thought of. We bring those suggestions to the table, but we also bring in the work and try to bring the right people to the table. An equity bill that would be, I wouldn't say fluff, but something that's just proposed and sounds good, or inclusive, expungement, these key words, people, okay, legalizing it, you know, they're riled up, they're voting for it, but you got to put the meat behind everything to support those issues, or that thing that just got passed will fail. And I feel like that's what's been happening in a lot of states that people don't really talk about because they're still trying to get on the ground of it. But like with J.B. Pritzker coming in, we're going to legalize cannabis. We're going to legalize cannabis. But what about everything behind it? You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people like praising JB. Oh, he's going to make cannabis legal. Oh, now Rahm Emanuel thinks it should be legal. Oh, Michael Madigan now thinks it should be legal. Right. And I'm going, yeah, they want it to be legal so they can take the tax money to fund, you know, stuff that they don't want. They don't want corporations to pay their fair share of taxes. They want to place more taxes on regular people, consumers. Right. And, you know, what is Chicago NORML proposing happen to those proceeds from, you know, are you trying to make it so that those proceeds go back into communities that are affected by the war on drugs, or
that's exactly
like
what we're trying to do. That's exactly what we're fighting for, because it's you got to inform the people. It all starts with the people. We could be doing a million things to try to educate and promote it, but it still breaks down to the people being informed. You know what I mean? Certain things probably wouldn't be able to, you know, when you think about cannabis and legalization from a business aspect, even having a cannabis business, you have to have approval, and your area has to be zoned. There are no approved areas in the south side of Chicago. So you got to think about the communities that don't have these businesses. And the aldermans, you know, the battle starts there too. The aldermans are pretty much the ones that approve it and everything. They reject the cannabis businesses. So when you're looking at a map of Chicago, everything cannabis related is north side, far south side, or downstate. You know what I mean? And when you look at who's getting arrested for cannabis possession, it's that core where these dispensaries aren't at. You know what I mean? So, you know, like they passed conceal and carry. You would have thought everybody in Chicago would have had a gun, but they don't, because it costs money to get a conceal and carry license. It's still ways of not being able to get a conceal and carry. Like you can't get a medical cannabis card if you have certain felonies or whatnot. So you can get prescribed opioids, but you can't get a medical cannabis card because you don't been in jail.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting. Really bringing it down to the sort of the granular, the local level, at the aldermanic level, because each alderman has the ability, the power to decide. Oh yeah, this business is going to get approved, or if there's something that needs to be changed in terms of the code, and how is Chicago NORML pushing at the local level? I mean, have you, say, confronted those aldermen? Have you put them on a list? Like that would be like, hey, here are the aldermen that we've been fighting.
We've worked with, we partnered up with Action Now, and we're actually part of a cohesive situation with Pure Cannabis. It's us, Chicago NORML, Action Now, and a couple other different groups. But we kind of all came together. Like Action Now hits up Inglewood to even get it on the ballot to. You know, they said it on the ballot when we had the last voting for cannabis tax dollars to go to education. But what's the education? You know, or you know, to go to this, that, and the third. It needs to be specific, because if it's not, it's just fluff. It's, you know.
Right. Yeah, and that was actually something that I think a lot of folks who are concerned about is, you know, you're taxing something and you're looking at it as Shana was saying, as a revenue source, but where are those dollars going? I mean, and historically, education dollars haven't gone to those same communities that we're talking about.
Yep, they haven't gone.
So,
and the sad part about it is, if you were to put a dispensary in the area, Inglewood, employ people from the area, have those proceeds, you know, just, you know, if money from cannabis businesses were to go to the neighborhood that it served, the neighborhoods would flourish. It would be able to reinvest in community stores, not corporate stores, like you say, because Chicago's being corporatized.
Right.
And even more, something that I was just, me speaking for Donte Townsend, I would hate for everything that we're fighting for to get kind of undermined by certain, like how you said, you spoke on it earlier, neighborhoods being gentrified. For cannabis tax dollars to gentrify our neighborhoods.
Yeah. That is really kind of but then, like, how do you then, I feel like there's a couple of things. One, as you're, going throughout the city of Chicago and educating folks and creating, like you said, train the trainer, getting folks in the community engaged and aware of these things, it's sort of like then the pressure has to be on educating our legislators. It's like, this is the impact. It's like, when you turn down that zoning change, you're hurting the rest of the community. Exactly. And this is like, there's a cascade effect. That's the domino effect. And so, like, as far as you said, you're working with a coalition of groups. you're obviously advocating at the state level. Are there things you're doing in the electoral side? Are you saying, like, are you committed to this platform? Are there things that you're pushing on that, like on the local level with the municipals coming up?
We're doing a lot of work on the local level. As far as working with anybody specifically, we can't really work with one person per se or whatnot. With JB, just taking office, a lot is being into consideration. Everything is happening now, so we're trying to do our best to kind of steer that horn, if that makes any sense, to kind of stay on the lawmaking side to see what they're doing. Working with different organizations to try to see what's, because we all know what we would like to see as an equity bill. The thing is, like you say, informing people it's been kind of rough. A lot of people come out because of word of mouth, but a lot of people, like you say, only want to get high. A lot of people reach out to us on a professional level, and you got to work from the ground up, like you say, working with these different aldermen on the community level. It's like people, cannabis is one of the biggest things that's being talked about on the news. When a lot of people come to our meetings, that we have our monthly board meetings, and everybody wants to know, how do we get in? How do we get involved? How do we get a dispensary? Like, everything starts not with us, but it comes from educating yourself and learning, like you say, with your aldermen, them not approving certain things. It's a lot.
We have to take a quick break, but we're very excited to have Donte Townsend here from Chicago NORML, and we're just going to take a quick break. You're listening to the Left with Sameena and Shana, and we will be right back.
I'm Sameena Mustafa.
I'm Shana East.
We're producing a show on WCPT Sundays at 1 o'clock.
What should we call it?
How about Smash the Patriarchy?
I like it, but that's a lot of pressure. What about left-leaning ladies?
What about woman-splaining?
Yeah, but what about when we have guys on? What about Madigan's worst nightmare?
It gets enough attention.
I got it. To the left.
I like that. That could work.
Tune in to the Left with Sameena and Shana on WCPT 820, Sundays at 1.
You are listening to the Left with Sameena and Shana. I'm Shana East.
I'm Sameena Mustafa. And we are back talking to Donte Townsend of Chicago NORML. We're talking about cannabis legalization. And Shana, you wanted to...
Oh, I was just saying that we should, I just wanted to talk about what is going on right now. So we've heard that JB, our soon-to-be governor, is, making moves to legalize cannabis, and I just wanted to ask you sort of like where we're at right now and what timeline do you think this is going to happen, or what needs to take place, and what also be sure to let people know where they can find out more about Chicago NORML and how they can get involved.
For sure. Right now, everything is moving fast. As JB has said, he's been making cannabis, legalizing it as one of his top priorities. They've made different statements about including black minorities for businesses, entrepreneurship in the cannabis industry, and restorative justice as far as reinvesting in communities or whatnot. Chicago NORML is trying its best to work with JB to ensure, not to say put your money where your mouth is, but put your money where communities need it the most. Mm-hmm. And not just where, don't say it where it sounds the best at, you know what I mean? So with us, Chicago NORML has a lot going on this year in 2019. You can follow us on all social media platforms, Chicago NORML on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter as well. Our Instagram shows a very, very in-depth visual about what we do. We just had our dispensary training earlier this month, and then another one November 11th. We have the visuals from that as well. Train the Trainer, chicagonormal.org, chicagonormal.everything.
Okay.
But yeah, also chicagonormal.org/membership. If you would like to be involved with Chicago NORML, being active in your community, especially on the South Side where we need the most help, volunteer. Any college students, professors, people who have any type of passion for social justice. We do a lot. We are we have a very small team, even though in the year we've done a lot. We also won the Chapter of the Year award in our first year.
Congratulations.
So, we're doing a lot that I sometimes even forget about because there's so much. But we definitely, we're the active cannabis organization. I can say that.
Yeah.
For some people are active. Let it in. Some people are, there are a lot of cannabis organizations out there. I will say that, and they want your membership. We want your time if you want to give us your time, because that's what we need, because we're active.
People power.
Yeah. And this is sort of like really like an opportunity to actually have an impact because it's going so fast, and because we have a change in the executive in the state, and so I'm sorry. The fact that you have a seat at the table is terrific.
It's so much going on right now that staying active with Chicago NORML is the best way to stay involved with anything cannabis related, especially on the involvement side. I don't know, I can't name, and I don't know anybody that can name, or if you can Google any organization that gives you an opportunity to go down with the lobbyists and we're with NORML, we're with the Chicago NORML, that gives an organization, or we give people a chance to have a dispensary training to even know, and not just something, this is cannabis, this is sativa, this is indica. This, you know what I mean? It's like we actually teach people what you need to know in Illinois so you can put this stuff on your resume and get a job. And dispensaries are Windy City Cannabis. They're like a second home to me. They're family. They have a business membership. There are different organizations that have business memberships. Mission Illinois Dispensary on 85th and Commercial. Businesses can join and as a business grow with us. Just staying on top of everything is our plan for 2019, and making a better culture for Chicago as a whole for cannabis. We would love to not just accept legalization. We would love to be the reason why people are getting out of jail, why people are educated to want to do things in the cannabis industry other than just, I want to grow weed. You know what I mean? So, and like you said earlier, I know we kind of cutting short on time. I'm not an advocate. I work a hard ass job every day, but I have a great business mind, and I want to bring people that look like me, that grow up from where I grew up from, in this billion-dollar industry.
But you're showing a way that you can be involved in entrepreneurship and get involved in business, but that it's equitable. It's socially equitable business. Yeah, exactly. It's not about profiting infinitely at the expense of all else, other people.
I feel like Chicago NORML has the power to motivate our politicians to do what's right. And that's really what it's about. We all know how much money is going to be coming in. The money is unlimited. You don't even need to count it.
Right.
Let's fix the neighborhoods. Let's open up some shelters. Let's open up some clinics. Let's open up some, let's give an opportunity to open up grocery stores where you can't buy apple at, like Inglewood, like South Shore is. Let's invest in young black youth. Let's invest in young brown youth. Let these dollars do something other than just build up the skyscrapers bigger. You know what I mean?
Right. Definitely.
Or put more bikes somewhere.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing is like it all kind of comes down to, you know, everyone is excited about the revenue, but where is the investment going?
Where's the investment?
Right. Let's not use this revenue to fix problems that, you know, legislators made or whoever made.
Exactly. Or for police pension.
Right.
That's something that Rahm Emanuel, when he went on the news and said that everybody, oh, he's going to give weed money to the cops. Like, you know, like that guy might not.
That's a whole show on its own. Yeah, what's wrong with that?
There's so many ironies in that statement. It's just it'll make your head spin.
But that's another thing too, though. What people need to realize, just as Chicago operates as a business, people really need to do their research on neighborhood businesses. Even with the Rahm, I don't think Rahm's going to be in there next time around.
Maybe he'll be an investor.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But we need to make sure that we
just like John Boehner. John Boehner is now.
Oh, yeah.
We need to make sure that our next mayor is very cannabis savvy as well.
Are you guys listening? All 21 of you?
Yeah. Hopefully our next mayor will be very cannabis savvy as well. And that is about reinvesting in the community first. Chicago, like I said, Chicago is my home. I don't want to go anywhere and do anything unless I do it here first. And I feel like weed money can change Chicago.
Yeah.
Well, we're really glad you came all the way out to WCPT Studios, and I know it's a trek for you, and we really appreciated hearing about the work you're doing, and I think it's amazing, and, you know, if we can support you in any way, please let us know.
Y'all let me get my voice out. And
thank
you guys for the invitation.
Yeah, no, thank you for the work you do. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So we just have a few minutes left, but we got to do a little bit preview of what's coming up next week and next year. So
next week we have Sheila Garland Olanaran from National Nurses United and the Illinois Poor People's Campaign, as well as she'll be my co-host, so she'll be like my surrogate Sameena. And then our guest is Amara Enya, who is a candidate for mayor.
Yeah, we're going to have to ask her about the cannabis.
Yeah, we'll ask her what her stance is, which I think is pretty good.
Tell her to reach out to Chicago NORML.
Okay.
Because anybody else is going to not be pushing community reinvestment.
Right.
And for somebody that's of her nationality, as Sameena a lot, especially to Chicago, that's what people want to see. They want to vote for somebody that's going to fix their neighborhood and specifically fix the hood.
Yeah.
So we got that coming up next week, and then is the next week the white supremacy?
January 6th, we're talking about white supremacy on the left with Anoa Changa and then Bryn Hufdy of the Nova Collective. So we're gonna be talking about what the issue is and how some folks are trying to solve it. So.
And then we have a couple episodes coming up with some aldermanic candidates, so that's going to be exciting in January and February, and we're going to plan ahead for, we'll let you guys know when we have some more episodes planned. I just wanted to give a shout out to our producer, Ms. Lady B.
Thanks, Lady B.
In the other room, and say thank you to Donte Townsend, and thank you to Justin Streckel of National NORML, who referred us to you.
Yeah, the guys at NORML are awesome. I told them exactly what I wanted to do, and they was all for it.
Yeah, I know him from the Bernie campaign. We met, and we have spoken at events together, and he's a good guy, and he said, if you ever do an episode on cannabis, let me know. And then he referred us. So thank you to Justin. Thank you to Jackrabbit for all his help on our website and other things. I wanted to thank the Kaufmans who donated.
Nice.
They didn't just donate. They bought tickets to our upcoming fundraiser on March 16th at the Hideout.
Yeah, so save the date, mark your calendars.
We don't have the program set yet, but it's going to be, we're going to record live, and we're going to be able to use that recording for a later episode.
Right.
So don't, you want to get your foot in the door, you want to get a ticket so you're there, so you're heard, so you're recorded, so you're on the air at WCPT.
Yeah.
So please go on Brown Paper Tickets, and you can buy a ticket there. We have early bird tickets available for $27 through December 31st. Mostly because we need to pay for the next month's airtime by then. So please. And then they'll go.
Support.
Then they'll go to up to 40. And then you can also make a outright gift. So you can just donate, even if you can't make it, you can buy a ticket for someone else who can't afford to come, who,
Right. And we are listener supported, you guys. We cannot be here without the great supporters we've had so far, and the folks that if you know somebody who likes content like you just heard and wants to have us keep going, you can support us on patreon.com/totheleftradio. If you are not in Chicago and can't attend, you could certainly support us that way.
And you can pay by Venmo, by PayPal, any other way. You can send us a check. We have all sorts of options, so you can't weasel your way out of supporting us.
On that note, I think we're going to
wait, I have a couple more thank yous. I wanted to thank my new comrade, Danny Postel, who is, another thing is I got accepted onto the DSA International Committee. So now I can do my international work. And I met with a comrade here in Chicago, and he's great and supportive and awesome. And I wanted to say a shout out to him. And find us on social media.
Yeah, we're out of time, so I will see you in the new year. Shana will be here with Sheila, and have a great holiday, everybody.